Hello and a warm welcome to another episode. My guest today is Maxim Markert, former Chief Revenue Officer at Skribble and Go-to-Market Advisor for Corporate Rebels. Together, we are exploring the challenges of scaling an entire revenue organization and creating silos between marketing, sales, customer success, and product by accident. But we're also talking about what's needed to overcome them and why mindset is crucial.
A warm welcome, Maxim, and I'm so happy to have you around today. We will talk about the challenges dealing with hypergrowth and building up an entirely revenue organization at the same time.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So you had the pleasure, and I had it too. You need to grow as fast as possible. You're doing a lot of mistakes looking backwards. So let us share some of your mistakes, and I will add some to the equation.
Okay, that would be great to not make me look like a total single failure. But no, I'm fine. So in one of the startups, or actually in all of them, there's always the pressure, right, to grow very quickly. You have investors to satisfy. You have to prepare the next round. So we know the game. And in at least one occasion, we started hiring on the back of very good growth. Started to hire very quickly a lot of people because we felt this is going to continue. And that was during the pandemic. And then the pandemic ended and things, then changed again. So during the pandemic, we then hired quite quickly a lot of people, and what we did is we applied basically the structures that most out there are using. So you have SDRs, you have account executives, you have customer success, you have some marketing folks, and then basically scaling that up and doing more, or spreading the work over more people. Then, of course, we needed at some point heads off, right? So a head of customer success, a head of marketing, and a head of sales. At the time, in the beginning, I was responsible for the whole revenue organization. In the beginning, we split a bit the responsibility for marketing. So the CEO, C-level team was helping out on that side. I was leading the sales team. Then after some time, sales and success team, after some time, we brought in a head of customer success into the company. Then later on, head of marketing, head of sales, and so forth. And by the way, customer support, what we put, because there was another team, we put that in a different department, right? So that was more under operations. The interesting thing is that when we started, when I joined quite early on, we're around 15, 20 people, we had a go-to-market team, right? So there we had everyone together, marketing, sales, customer success, and customer support. And that was working actually quite nicely and well. And everybody really enjoyed that because you knew front to back what's happening, what's working well. You have input from support. You get feedback from sales, which was me alone, not quite alone. Was two of us at the time, and so you have the full picture, right? And you talk about what's coming out next. What should we give as feedback also to the product? And product was partially in there at some point, but then was one of the first ones to be basically taken out of this group. And as we grew, this group was split up. In hindsight, and then basically what happened, you run into the problem with first the pandemic as a change, then the end of the pandemic as another change, and the cycles switched somewhat. And then we run into 22, 23, where things are in general looking a bit bleak with the war, inflation, etc. And then suddenly, things get slower, and it gets really heavy-handed, and bureaucracy or just overhead creeps in because you have now heads off and you have a management team and so on and so forth. So different layers at which decisions are made. Usually, decisions are made ideally with those accountable, right? And they sit then typically higher up, and then the rest and the pyramid has to execute the plan.
Very classic functional expertise level in every department.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And everybody tries to optimize for their own processes, right?
Yeah.
And the challenge is it became less fun for I'm, there to speak for several people here, it became less fun. It became more work, right? And work not in a very inspiring sense. At least to me, and I was also basically going through the middle management and then the executive level responsibilities, and at least at the time when I was responsible also for the sales team and the overall revenue organization. That is quite demanding, right? So you become the bottleneck. You have to make some decisions. You have to, be left, right, and center and everywhere. You have to satisfy requirements from, so to speak, the top, from the board. You have to also basically cater to a team of 6, 7, 8 sellers, which all human beings have their own, demands or challenges or problems that will come up if you have a growing team, or when people come. Let's put it this way: when people come together, you will have conflicts, you will have problems. That's very normal. You have to deal with that, and that is very exhausting. And then you suddenly are not focused as much anymore on the customer. At least my experience, you have many things that distract you. And at the peak, I had like my personal calendar was fully booked with meetings for 24 hours a week in advance, right? That's without the stuff that comes up last minute. So not very productive. And this has been then my learning when I left. Basically, I was very exhausted emotionally and also my energy level. When I left, I took the time to look into other ways of doing that, and I was kind of exploring that. But to stay with a failure, it's a failure in that sense. Then you need to scale back and down. We also scaled up too quickly. Processes were not in place or did not scale in the same way, on the same speed as the organization. So at the time, or then in hindsight, the mistake was just to hire too quickly, too many people, and already hiring for very specific roles at a time when these roles are not fully clear yet as to what you want to achieve with that, and how does that fit in the entire picture, right? And what's in it for the customer.
Yeah, it's super insightful and valuable. To just add more failures from my side. So scaling too fast is definitely on that list, but it's super tricky. Looking backwards, of course, it makes sense, but to really, without properly knowing where to head and constantly evolving your go-to-market process, it's guaranteed that you will hire not the perfect fit profiles, at least in my point of view. So you have limited information, then you're progressing, and then you might have, so if you dare to kind of go for a shortcut and saying, yeah, he or she has a good network or it's a solid seller, and if the mindset, and we will come to this in a minute, is if the mindset is not right about cooperation, is it really a purposeful job or role he or she is fulfilling, then it's super difficult to, it's super fragile, let's put it that way. The other thing I learned, and it also comes to mindset, is there are at least two ways or two types of sellers. So there is kind of the lonely wolf seller, great in short-term results, and there are sellers who are caring about cooperation and they have the bigger picture in mind. So it's not just I'm serving needs immediately, but I also have something which I then hand over to customer success, and they have a frictionless handover. Everyone is pleased and we are exceeding expectations. It took me a while to figure this out, and I hired also kind of lonely wolf because you said this, you are under tremendous pressure to deliver results. No one, frankly, is caring about so everyone is caring if you do not meet your results, and if you do not have this holistic view about so what is happening after sales, then you're definitely hiring the wrong people, or you have some people with a different mindset and different skills. So let's switch to your what came afterwards, because I'm a huge fan, a tremendous fan of Corporate Rebels, and what they kind of untapped or revealed. So the floor is yours again.
Yeah. So then after that experience, it was a couple of experiences before as well, which are along the same lines, just not at the same magnitude. I grew a bit frustrated with that, and I looked into, basically taking the time out also to broaden my knowledge and horizon of how else could you run an organization, and also remembering that the way we started, and all of us agreed that I spoke to, the way we started out in the startup was actually quite nice, and it worked quite well, and it was real fun. So we didn't get up on Monday morning because we needed the paycheck, but we got up because it was really fun to work on something together and to win over customers, right? So to do something that matters and to make a difference. So I came across Corporate Rebels, did some courses there on organizations, on how you can organize differently, how companies, and this is one of the assets they have. They have researched more than 150 companies worldwide that work without bosses and flat hierarchies. It's not that there's no hierarchy; it's just a flat hierarchy, or contextual hierarchy, depending on what the weather is like. Say the economic weather, you might have different people with different skill sets that you want to have authority or to be to give more direction to the rest of the people. And then the things change again, right? You have a different customer, different setting than somebody else. So it's a very, very, very much dynamic, the word is a bit burned, agile, truly agile organization. And not an agile organization in the sense of I have my stiff formal hierarchy, I have my command control structure, and then I try to bring in some agile processes and methodology, which doesn't work. If you speak to people in big corporates that introduce agile, it's usually a lot of frustrations. There might be exceptions, but most of the time it's hard. So there's many examples of companies who are not only working without bosses, so you have much more autonomy and accountability on the level of teams, of every single employee and of teams. So it's not autonomy, there's mayhem, there's anarchy, and people do whatever they want. No, it's autonomy combined with a radical transparency. So everybody knows everything about the business. You know how much money you have in the account left. You know how much you're burning through. You know how much you're making. You know what is coming in. So these organizations are bottom line a triple win, if you like. So it's for employees a lot more fun to work, meaning they also can maintain their motivation. They are highly inspired to work for a higher purpose, because that's also something that's you mentioned this important. Those companies set a purpose that is not a revenue target, but the purpose is something like we want to make the best product for our customers. We want to make the customers extremely happy or be closer than anybody else or understand them better. And so whatever it might be, but it is the typical question of why are we doing this? And this is front and center. So you have the purpose, you have the autonomy and accountability. You have also a focus on mastery, right? So the understanding of what is a career is also quite different. You want to become better at what you're doing. So like you, Bjorn, you've gone very deep, very broad and deep into the revenue organizations. You understand that extremely well. And you're doing well by sharing that knowledge and consultancy services. Or if you go into an organization, you can actually have a big impact, right? And with that, build out your authority. And it shows also that people are much more motivated if they can do that, right? If I can become a master of my skill, if I can become master of my trade, that is highly rewarding. People come to you and ask for your opinion. They make you the informal authority, right? They follow or want to follow you or want to be in your team and work with you. So there's still an element of an important element of mastery in there. And you and Stephanie, you're rightfully are doing have this offering of sales mastery, growth mastery, right? So this goes in exactly in that direction. So you have these three things: autonomy and accountability. You have mastery, and you have a purpose in an organization. And these companies who work like that, without formal hierarchy, without formal titles that say if you're the head of, you have supposedly more knowledge than someone else, they are also bottom line much more successful. And it is a riddle to me why the broad finance world is overlooking this for a very long time. And there's very big examples. There is the Swedish Handelsbank, there is Visi, mortgage broker in the Netherlands, there is a Birdsort in the Netherlands, there's Morningstar to Hier in China, one of the biggest white goods manufacturer in the world. There is Morningstar Tomato Processing as a B2B business in California, have the biggest market share, not a single manager in the company. So these companies not only have happier employees, they also have happier customers, right? And in the end, a better bottom line. So they are completely outperforming. Handelsbank, Swedish Handelsbank, I just recently heard they have 0.00% default on the credit loans they're handing out, right? Which bank does have that? So this is, and so I came across this and I saw that there is a different way of organizing, and actually it's better for everyone, right? For the customer, for the employees, and bottom line, financially, they all do better. And that intrigued me a lot. And then I looked into what is it, and you will not find. So all of them are organized slightly differently, but they all have in common, and it's about radical transparency, no secrecy. You're not hiding information from your employees or showing only to the board or only to founders, but everybody has access to all information. There's also salary transparency. There is typically no bonus, which has long been debunked as not really creating motivation, but rather being a method of threatening people to do something. So it's demotivating, in fact. Bold claim here.
Yeah, we'll come to this in a second.
Okay. So the way to organize here is a bit along the lines of how in the experience I described before, is that you are fully focusing on, for example, the customer, right? And you have one client or one boss, and that's the customer. If you're front-facing part of the organization. If you are a support function, say part of the people support team, I don't want to say HR because humans shouldn't be called resources. So you have a people organization, you have engineering, for example, so the R&D. They are then serving again the internal client, which is the outside-facing organization. And there's a few examples of companies that have aligned like that, with purely the customer in mind, and then you have a team that consists of sales, marketing, customer success, support, and product, very important, and product to discuss what's happening out there in the market. How are we doing, right? And what can we do to make to make things easier? Looking at the financial numbers that everybody has access to, well, we have so and so much left in the bank. This is what we're burning through. This is what we hear from the market. What can we do? And the contrast to that, and this is what I experienced also in the corporations I worked for, is if you have silos and you treat people like they wouldn't understand the financials anyway, or you just selectively show them some numbers, what happens is, in my experience, and I'm guilty of that myself, right? So I've done this also in corporate life, is you are in sales, for example, you come back and you say, look, the customer didn't buy because they need the button here, right? So engineering, please, or product and engineering, please, we need that button. I promise you I will sell the hell out of it. Right, so then time is wasted and spent on bringing this button. You didn't even loop in marketing, right? At the end, marketing maybe finds out they need to do something or not about this new feature. A long story short, in the end, the customer still doesn't buy because the reason was likely something else. But you have convinced everybody in the company that this is required and this is the thing to be done. And there's no consequences usually, right? At least I haven't ever seen it because. Well, it's not your responsibility you're not accountable as a seller, right? You have a head of sales, and that's the bureaucracy that comes with any formal hierarchy. So I call on people to lead another team of people, and this middle manager is now responsible for making decisions or preparing decisions. You have someone meeting the customer, telling the boss what happened and what you believe you need to do to win more market share, or to win more customers, or make existing customers more happy. This person then talks to the next level higher up, right? So there's a meeting with the engineering team, product team. So there's already secondhand information transferred on the head of level. Then they go back to their teams, and then they pass on information from that decision to their teams to just execute it. So and then you have we've seen this also across all organizations. Then you have engineers, developers, raising a lot of questions like, why are we doing this and how does this make sense? And can we talk to sales? And I was like, no, don't talk to sales, don't talk to marketing, just do your job. It's all been discussed and decided on a level that's out of your pay grade, and so it makes. You see, what I'm trying to say here is it creates a long way. It creates a lot of bureaucracy, but maybe the best thing would be that the adults that are in your business that are making life decisions at home, buying houses, cars, raising kids, all that stuff, to trust them to sit together in a room and discuss, hey, do we really need this? And will we really, make more business with that and better business? Will the customer really be happier? And how do we measure that? And looking at how much time we have and how much money we have, is that really the thing where we want to invest? And all the examples out there show that if you let people, as you described it, Bjorn, as well, in the revenue organization, move closer, not in silos through some hierarchy communication levels, but closer together and make a decision as a team. And it doesn't have to be a unanimous decision, right? Not everybody has to agree. And sometimes you have to say, look, is it safe enough to try? Can we take the risk? What's the risk? If it doesn't work, how can we go back, right? Or how can we de-risk it? And this conversation at the absolute, the hires calls it zero distance to the customer, right? Zero distance to the actual challenge. If you can make a decision there, you have all the information you need, and the back and forth is super quick instead of going through some artificial structure. And my learning also through Corporate Rebels was also looking at how we run businesses today. Also startups are run according to Taylor's principles, right? Divide the work into small chunks, and everybody just does their bit, and some super smart person on top knows everything, sees everything, understands everything, has 100% of information, and can make the smarter decisions than anybody else. And time again, we see it doesn't work, and it works really poorly for people and people's engagement. They don't understand why decisions are made. They see what's really happening and how the smart theories don't deliver. It does make the customers happier, because then there's weird stuff coming out. You have a lot of bureaucracy. Every head of you employ costs a lot of money that you could have deployed otherwise.
Wow, there's so much into it. It's so many strong statements. So I'm just, we could kind of continue talking for ages, but so there were some points I'd like to just double stress. So you mentioned the fun part, because I think, and this is like you were saying, we are talking about huge organization. It's not kind of, we are fantasizing about in the ideal world. So this is happening, this is real. And when we look about the kind of command and control, and I think we both have been in this kind of checking data quality, really pushing people, kind of forcing them to make another call, not kind of driven by them. It's an entirely different way of working to decide on. The second thing is, let's be frank, what we do in the startup world is complex. It's not complicated because there are so many variables. There is no cause and effect. And if this command and control thing kind of originally Taylor made this coming from a production point of view, and therefore it's totally right. So if you have a factory, if you have a McDonald's, if you have transactional sales, you can apply these methods, and it's absolutely fine to do so. But if you go to market, if we talk about revenue creation holistically, I think we have to rethink whether this is the appropriate setup to do this with fun, and at the very end also measured in bottom line. But it's kind of, for now, it's just for the brave ones, I would say. But I would love to see more startups going this path.
I couldn't agree more. You're spot on. It is a complex problem, and the saying goes, the principle is, if you have a complicated problem, as you said, right, then you can solve this with a process. You know the levers, you know the impacts, and so on. If you have a complex problem, then you need some cognitive input, right? In other words, you need creativity. You need for people to figure something out. If you're in front of a customer, if you're talking to a prospect, that's never complicated. It's always complex. You do not know entirely their situation. You do not know what will be the answer. So your script is something to learn, to have an idea of what you're doing or where you're trying to get to. But ultimately, you need to have a human-to-human conversation. And you need to have some creativity and sometimes say, look, yes, for 90% of the customers, we did follow this process, or we did this and this. But the crucial 10 or 20%, which make then your solid customer base, you need to be a bit more creative, right? And then that's where people need to sit together and think of creative ways. How can we, without burning a lot of money, make this work and make this happen. And go-to-market is exactly that. We do not know yet, even remotely, what the process roughly should look like. And we need to be very creative. And this is not something you will solve by hiring big teams that get ahead of and putting them into silos. And I just had one example in mind. Let's see where that comes back in terms of, you mentioned a CRM, right? Why should I fill in that data? Right? At the moment, many situations I was told, like, just fill in that data. We just need this information. Don't ask why, just marketing needs it. But if marketing, sales, customer success, and support sit down in the same room and you have the conversation, guys, we need to get more revenue. What do we do? Do we go to existing customers? Do we go to new customers? And then success and market or sales say to marketing expert, look, can we run some campaigns? Can we do something here and there? And that person will likely say, yeah, I could, but maybe I need some more information from our CRM. And then suddenly you have it, right? And then the sales team will say, like, okay, so I get you that. And then you can run these campaigns, right? And then we see whether this works. It's a completely different conversation. The outcome will be much better because then people fully understand why they are doing things. It doesn't matter. Then you can always say, look, let's not track that. That attribute is totally irrelevant.
Absolutely. So it's a great practical example at the very end, because for me, CRM and working with data and reliable data. So one thing is, like you were saying, everyone. I did, guilty myself again. So I was more or less forcing people and saying I would like to have these amounts of data, manual data. So no ChatGPT, no workflows, no automation, no nothing. So then you get shitty data. So because people, it's no fun. And even worse, they do not understand what for, and you cannot translate it immediately to their benefit or to the benefit of the company. And that's why I'm always, and sometimes customers say, are you crazy? And I challenge them and say, every data field which is at the current state of your CRM is questionable. If you cannot understand why this is helping you and the organization that we collect these data and that amount of detail, then please ask. Because I can then translate it, what is the benefit for you and us. And then, like you are saying, it's an entirely game changer in terms of, it makes sense. So let's try to make it then more efficient. Can we apply data, kind of technology, tech stack, etc.? But that's a different question. It's not about why, it's about then to make it more efficient. And this was one of the epiphanies I had. Start with a mindset first, treat them as professionals, educated people on eye level. And the type of
exactly, and if you don't treat them like people, like professionals, like grown-up adults who can make a decision, then the question is, why did you hire them?
That's another one. Maxim, it was a pleasure. We could continue, and we will definitely continue. But cool. For you listeners, we will continue offline, which is a shame for the time being. Thank you so much. So I hope you loved this episode. Please share it, comment on it, like it. I'm always curious to hear your feedback. Have a wonderful day.
Good one.